So this lecture is about three-point lighting for animators. And the first thing to say is that I am not an expert in lighting, and this is not a lighting course. You do not need to be an expert at lighting in order to be a good animator and to have a successful career in the industry. However, it is useful to understand the basics of lighting, and one of the most enjoyable things about putting together a demo reel is lighting your work and making it look pretty, and being able to take your animation to a level where you can say honestly that it is a finished shot. And in order to do that, you don't need to be able to light at a professional level, but you do need to be able to light at the level of a kind of enlightened amateur. In other words, to be able to put some lights in front of a character and make it look decent. So the purpose of giving you this lecture is to understand the basic theory of lighting, which comes from stage lighting. And when we talk about three-point lighting, we're really talking about stage lighting. And anyone with a background in camera or photography will understand what I'm talking about immediately, because anyone who does photography and has to go on photo shoots will understand the basics of lighting as I'm going to talk about it here. But for our purposes, what we need to know is that nothing in Maya comes alive without some kind of lights being placed on it. When you open up Maya for the first time, you use the default lighting in Maya. But as soon as you start using your own lights, you'll find that you can get much more interesting effects and you can produce much nicer work. So, with that in mind, let's talk about what is lighting. And of course, lighting really is cinematography. Or in a way, it's painting. Your job. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's a gaffer, and he says that his job is to make actresses look pretty. And in a way, he's right. That is his job. He's there to make sure that people don't look too dark or too light or too blown out or too pasty. He's there to make people look good. He's to put the right light on people so that their skin looks nice and warm or cold if it's a zombie movie, or whatever it is. He's there to make people look good. And in live action, the lighter is called a gaffer, also known as the chief lighting technician. And the chief lighting technician or gaffer is responsible for the overall lighting of the film. Their assistant is called the best boy. You'll see these in when you go to live action movies. You'll see these names on the credits. And perhaps you've always wondered what they were. So now you know. But basically, it's all about electricals and lights and cables and making actresses look nice. And all of this comes from stage lighting. CG lighting comes from stage lighting. And in a way, when we create CG objects, we are putting objects on a stage and we are lighting them. So the principles of stage lighting are very, very applicable to everything that we do in CG. So let's ask the question: what is three-point lighting? Basically, at its most simple, it's three lights. It's your key light, which is this guy down here. It's your fill light, which is this guy down here, and then it's your backlight or your rim light. Let's take each one of those in turn. The key thing to remember is that it's all about making stuff look pretty and also making stuff look attractive and not too heavily shadowed. As soon as you put a light on someone, you're going to start casting shadows. If you put two lights on someone, you're going to start to pick out some of those shadows so that they don't look too dark. So it's all about getting an attractive look to things. Let's start with the key light. This is your kind of your main light source, and it's sometimes called the main light, but it's going to be your biggest light, and it's going to be your main source of shadow and specular lighting. Typically, it's situated about 30 to 60 degrees to the left of the camera, and it's usually slightly above the camera, about 30 to 60 degrees above the camera, slightly looking down. And you might want to consider a warm color for your key light. Now, your fill light is usually slightly less than the key light. It's usually about 50% of the key light, and we call this the key fill ratio, is the ratio of the key light to the fill light. You might consider a cool light on this, although we've got a yellow tone here. This should probably be blue, because you probably want a cool colour. If we go back to our stage lighting, you'll see here there's a mixture of warm lights and cool lights, and the mixture of the two gives you a very nice look on stage. So with your fill light, you're probably going to turn off shadows. You don't necessarily want to be casting new shadows, but you do want to be picking out or helping to light up the existing shadows. And the purpose of the fill light is really to reach the areas that the key light cannot reach. And typically your fill light is 30 to 60 degrees to the right of the camera. So there's your key light over there, and there's your fill light over here. The final light is the rim light, and this light is typically you'll see it in if you watch old TV shows where the lighting can be really very obvious. Back in the 70s, you'll see very, very harsh specular highlights on people's hair. That's coming from the rim light. And we want a little bit of this. We generally speaking don't want it to cast shadows. It's also known as the backlight or the hair light. The hair light for obvious reasons, because you're picking up specular highlights on the hair. So those are your three lights, and if you add them all together, you should get a nice, round, warm feeling to the result. Let's try it with a teapot. If you have just a simple key light here on the teapot, that's the kind of effect you're going to get. You're going to see that we're getting very, very dark shadows behind this teapot. We don't really want that. That's why you want to have a fill light on the other side, so you take out some of the blackness here and make it more attractive, more light. And then if you add a backlight to it, you get this effect here, where you get a bit of a reflection coming from behind. And overall, you just get this more attractive, more three-dimensional feel to it there. So just generally nicer. Here's another example. Here's an actress with a key light only. You can see we're getting very, very harsh shadows in here. Here's with the well, actually, here's with the key light and the backlight, which they've added second, and that's picking up specular highlights on the hair. And now with the fill light, taking back some of those dark shadows that we were getting on the right-hand side of her face here. So obviously, key light and backlight and fill light, we're getting a much more attractive look overall. And here's the basic setup again. Key light 30 to 60 degrees from the left of our camera. Let's say our camera is here. Fill light 30 to 60 degrees to the right of the camera. Backlight behind. And here's the same idea again. So this obviously is just a general theory. We haven't said anything yet about how you actually create these lights in Maya. But this is the kind of thing you want to bear in mind. And you should be able to do most lighting setups in Maya using these three lights. So that's the basic principles, and hopefully that gives you an idea of where these theories come from, what the history of it is, and how we can apply it in 3D lighting.